Game of the day today is Star Wars Jedi Survivor, a true next-gen experience. Survivor is one of the prime examples of how you do a sequel. It builds off of everything in that original game in such a interesting way. It just feels so polished and well put together. Everything from the animations to the movement, to the way that the combat feels and how the platforming is so well mixed into the exploration, and then how the environments are designed to be tight yet big, and there's so much to explore, but there's so much to find. It is a masterclass in how you do an open area, Metroidvania-esque type of 3D game like this. The 5 different stances ensure that there's probably a playstyle for everyone. The combat is still my biggest complaint about the game, because there still isn't a combat style that feels like it's very combo heavy in the way that I want to play. Especially since this is coming from the God of War 3 director, I really want to do combos that utilize both buttons, but that's just not the way that the combat's designed in this. And I don't think the combat is bad by any means. It's just not necessarily my favorite type of combat in video games, but what is there is polished to a T. There is an insane amount of depth with it, and you can get really, really good, but it's also very approachable if you don't really want to spend a whole lot of time getting super good with it. That being said, the difficulty curve is fantastic. Pushes you just enough, but it never feels insurmountable, which is such a hard balancing act to do, so hats off to them for that. I'm recording this video in a post-Final Fantasy 16 world, but at the time that I played it, there was one set-piece sequence that was the coolest moment that I had seen in a next-gen game, and I was like, this is the type of shit that I need in next-gen. I've seen way doper things in Final Fantasy 16 now, but at the time, there is a crazy cool segment in this game. So dope, in fact, that it makes the final encounter feel really tame by comparison, and I really wish that there had been something like that to tie the game up. I also really like where the story went. I think in these games, they're fighting an uphill battle with the story because I know that they can't do anything that's going to majorly affect the Star Wars canon, and they obviously can't go against anything that's we already know to happen in 4, 5, and 6. So it's I know they're not going to take down the Empire. I know they're not going to defeat Darth Vader, right? I know these things aren't going to happen, which was my biggest issue with the story in the first one. It just felt like a MacGuffin hunt that ended up being pointless in the end. But in this one, what they did is they just made it a character-based story. They focused more in on the characters, more in on Cal and how he is figuring out how to move forward in a post-Jedi world, and I think it's really, really interesting. I love the character work that they did here, and it makes me really excited to see where these characters go in the third game. The platforming deserves a second mention because it feels really, really good and is some of the best and most fun platforming sections I've played in a game in a very long time. The way that you mix in wall running to air dashing to double jumping, it's just really fluid. And my favorite segments of the game were the platforming challenges. There's 2 or 3 of them, and they are excellent. I'm also a big fan of any time a game has hunts. My biggest complaint would be that the hunts were just basically the same enemies over and over and over again. I would like if each hunt was a unique boss battle that wasn't similar to anything else in the game. You get that with the final hunt, but the rest of them leading up there at some point just kind of start feeling like a chore to fight an enemy that's just a harder version of an enemy that you fought before. I also could have done with a few more planets, but what they did was the main planet Kobo was 4 planets in one. It's got a bunch of different biomes and environments that you explore as you're moving around it. And so there is a lot of environmental diversity. It's just all technically on one planet. There are other planets though, so you do travel a little bit around the galaxy, but not nearly as many as I was expecting going in. The game's length also feels spot on. It never outstays its ideas, but it does have time to fully flesh those ideas out. And the way that you unlock new things and you can go back to Kobo and other places and explore some more and open new paths and go on new side quests is all really, really fun. Ever since the Suikoden games, I don't know how to pronounce that word, get off my back. Ever since those games, I've been a big sucker of recruiting people and bringing them back to your town. And there's very few games that actually really do that outside of Suikoden. And this game has that. It's not as involved or impactful as I would have liked. I would have liked as you brought people back if more shops opened, if new contraptions were available at the cantina, and just stuff like that. There is a little bit of that, but not nearly as much as I would have thought going into the game. This is one of my favorite games of the year, a strong contender for Game of the Year. While I obviously do have some criticisms, the fact that this game is this good, just being the second one in the franchise, is incredible. And I am so hyped for the third one. And I'm not even a big Star Wars fan. These are just good video games.